Hello friends, welcome to your only channel Times of Coding. Today in our series Scala Express, we will learn how to do exception handling. Now in this session we will understand how to control our business logic while doing programming. In previous session we have learned control structures, and in this session we will focus on exception handling. Scala also gave us two ways. When any exception arises, we can even terminate our program with the exception message *, or we can handle that exception and we will continue executing our program. So now we will see how we can throw an exception out of the Scala code. So here I'm writing one statement which is throw new null pointer exception, and this is how we will write in Scala to throw an exception. And if you execute this, you will get some messages like java.lang.null pointer exception. So now we are creating one variable called num, in which I'm assigning value called 8, and then I'm defining one variable called 1/3. Here I'm keeping one if condition which is n mod 3 is equal to 0. So here I'm keeping the same num which we have defined earlier. It will go inside and divide by 3. If the num is divisible by 3, then we will do this operation, else we will throw runtime exception n must be divisible by 3. Now after writing this logic, we will execute and Scala will outcome num has been created, and then it has given us runtime exception called n must be divisible by 3 as expected. So this was one of the example where we were actually throwing the exception. Now we will see how to handle the exception. So to handle the exception, Scala gives us very powerful feature called pattern matching, and we will see how to use that pattern matching. So in this example, I'm defining one try block. So whenever we write contradictory statement where exception may arise, we need to wrap these kind of statement in try and catch block. So I'm defining one variable here called name, and in this I'm keeping Scala Express. Now I'm defining println statement. Technically should get us number format exception, and inside the catch I'm first defining the arithmetic exception where I'm not keeping anything here, and then I'm defining another statement called case, and here I'm defining number format exception, and with this number format exception I'm keeping one print, and here I'm passing handle number format exception. Now since we are handling, so our execution will keep moving on, so it will get us this print ln debug message as well, which is cool exception handled. So now when we execute this program, we get two messages. First, handled NFE, which we are getting from here, and then Scala is continuing the execution flow and it is getting us this cool exception handled. So now if you see, we have perfectly made up the situation for number format exception. But in your case, if you're doing the real-time coding, you don't need to just keep it with debug messages. In fact, you can include some condition. In fact, you can include some if conditions just to check prior. This name has to be int before doing this operation. Okay, so moving on, as I told you, above example we just made up for number format exception. Now I'll keep little change, and instead of number format exception, I will keep it null pointer exception now, because we are having all these statements same. So still it will create some number format exception only, but we will not handle it. And when we not handle it, how it terminates and what exception it will throw away to us, we will see now. So when we execute, Scala will get this exception called number format exception, and for input string Scala Express. Now here, since we are not handling any exception, it will go directly on the console and our program terminated. So that's how we use catch block with the try in case of exception handling. And if we miss to catch the exception, this is what will happen to our program, which we have seen now. Now I think it's a good time to understand the finally keyword role as well. When we write finally with the try, that means in this example, if you see, I'm keeping one variable which is store open is equal to true, and then inside the try block I'm printing debug messages called good morning store open, and since it is true it will write true only, store open true. And then inside the finally I'm making the change in this value. Since it is var, it will get reassigned, and then I'm changing the value from true to false, and then I'm printing println good evening store open is equal to false, because we have changed just now. Okay, so this is our happy go scenario where we will get first variable defined for us, and then good morning is store open true, and then good evening is store open false, which we in fact expected. So in this example, we have just played around the print ln statements just to keep debug message on the console. Now we will see how to yield the values out of try and finally. So in this example, I'm defining one function called overrule, and which will return us the value type of int, and in true I'm returning 10 here, and in finally I'm returning 100 here. Now when I do print overrule, it will get us the 100 if you see here after execution. So from try and finally, it is always recommended that you should not write the business logic inside the finally. Finally block is basically for those kind of statements where we are closing the databases connection or we are closing the streaming connection. It is basically to deconstruct the object. So if you write any business logic, your business logic will actually overrule the try block. So we should not do that. It is not recommended. Also, moving on, we will see the complete example where we are defining try, catch, and finally. So here I'm keeping the similar example which we have seen earlier. First I'm defining store open is equal to true, and then inside the try I'm defining good morning store open. It will get us the true only, and then I'm defining two variables here. Well, today trade and currency denominations. So here our total today trade was 10k, and then the currency denomination which we have received from customer while doing the today trade is $100 currency. So in this println, first we will write today trade divide by currency denomination, and it will get us the number of dollars which we have received today. And then in this catch block, I'm keeping one case statement which is arithmetic exception, and this arithmetic exception if we get, then we will print debug message called oh it's deadly corona. Just keep it for the moment and I'll tell you how we can use in later use case while making minor changes in this example when we perform the exercise after this example. So then I'm keeping one finally block which is changing the value of store open from true to false, and then we are printing good evening store open is equal to false because just now we have changed the value. So after Scala execution, as we expected, first message is good morning store open is equal to true, and then we expected $100 total check received as per our defined values here. And then since we have not expected any exception in this case, our execution flow will directly execute store open is equal to false, and then this statement which will get us good evening store open false. So far we have covered exception handling in theory. Now it's time to do some practical. First we will go inside this package and we will create one package for our today examples. I'll give the name called exception handling, and in this we will create another Scala worksheet. Here I'll keep it example. Now the very first thing which we have seen in today's session is how to throw a exception. So we will see that first. Here I have written null pointer exception with throw keyword, and with this throw we have new keyword as well, and this is how we throw an exception in Scala. Now we will execute. Okay, so as expected it is getting us null pointer exception now. After this example we have seen how to initialize a variable while keeping exceptions also in its one of these statement. So now we will do that example. I've defined num variable 8, then variable 1/3. Here I have kept one if condition where num mod 3 is equal to 0. If this number is divisible by 3, then we will perform this logic. Otherwise we will throw one runtime exception called and must be divisible by 3. Now I will execute, and we have received runtime exception as we expected. If you see in this example, we have not handled the exception, and since these all statements we have assigned in 1/3 variable and we have got this exception, so we will see now what is the current value of this 1/3. So to get this, first we need to write println and then 1/3 inside. I will run again. Okay, execution completed, and it is having actually nothing inside. That's why we have got nothing. It is safe to do like this in Scala. If no exception arise, your 1/3 variable will get assigned some value. If exception arise, your 1/3 variable will not get any value. So next time if you are using this 1/3 value anywhere, we need to keep one check. We need to keep one check in our logic. Now moving on, this is the next example which we have seen. Here I'm keeping try and catch block as you notice, and then I'm defining one variable name is Scala Express. Then I'm keeping that value casted into int, and then I'm dividing by 0. So here it should get us to this case statement because number format exception, that's what we have make exception here. So now I will execute, and yes, this is the message we have expected out of this debug statement. Now we have seen two examples. What happens when we don't handle the exception and what happens when we handle the exception. Now it's time to have a look on finally block. So to work with finally block, first we are defining a store open is equal to true. Then I'm keeping one statement println, and this statement is simply printing one debug message called good morning store open is equal to true. because we have assigned true, so this true will come here. Then and finally we are having a store open is equal to false, and then we are printing good evening store open false. Now we will see the outcome. As expected, we have get the outcome, and this is very happy go scenario with no exception. Now if you see in this example, we were actually not returning any value. So now we will see an example what happens when we return value out of this true and finally. So first I will clean the outcome, then I'll write the code. So here I'm defining one function called overrule. Here I'm returning value out of true block and then finally block. Now we will execute also and see what exactly outcome we will get out of this logic. So here if you observe, overrule function has been defined and it will return the int type, and here out of this println statement we have got 100, and this 100 we have written and finally, so this value has been overruled on try block value as expected. Now we have seen many examples about exceptional handling today. It's time to do one complete example with all the try, catch and finally together. So I'm writing this example here where I'm keeping the similar case which we have seen in earlier example also. Here I'm defining one store open is equal to true. Inside this try block, we are keeping one debug message called good morning store open true. Here I'm defining two new variables for you. So today trade 10k, currency denominations will be 100. So in this debug message, we are doing one calculation where today trade value get divided by currency denomination. So this statement will get us the exact check we have received for today trade. And then in case any exception arise while doing this calculation, we are having one arithmetic exception statement which will actually handle this type of exception only, and when this type of exception arise, it will print this statement. And then finally we are closing the store, and then we are printing one greeting message called store open is equal to false. Now we will see what could be the outcome after execution. Okay, so here we have received good morning store open true, and then we have received in this total, since our today trade was 10k, so we have received total $100 checks, and then we have got the debug message called good evening store open is equal to false as expected. So this is the usual life cycle of any store which we have discussed. Now let's just think in this corona time, since many of these stores are closed, this today trade will become 0 and this currency denomination will also become 0. Now when I execute, okay, so in today's situation it will get us the exception called arithmetic exception because there is no today trade, and since there is no today trade, there is no currency denomination we have received. So when you perform this calculation corona times condition, you will get arithmetic exception, and then you will get this message, you will get this debug message, oh it's deadly corona, and then we will close our shop. So I'll once again run through this example. The change what we have done here is I just simply made a change of 0 for today trade and 0 for currency denomination, and since we have kept this calculation inside the println statement, it will get us the arithmetic exception because we are dividing actually this value to 0, and when we get this arithmetic exception, our println will get the execution flow, and this will print the debug message called oh it's deadly corona, and finally will anyway execute it once we are done with catching the exception. So here basically we are changing the store open into false, that means store closing if you understand functionally. So here we opened the store, we did some transaction, and then we arrived at some exception because of corona times, and then we have given the exception also to the user that it's corona time. That's why there is no currency denomination we have received today, and since in this statement we have not received any checks, we have given an exception message also because of its deadly corona. We have not received any checks from today trade, and then we are closing the store. So in today's video, we have covered the scope for exception handling. I hope you liked the video. If you enjoyed the content, you can subscribe my channel to get my new video notification, and you can press the bell icon besides the subscribe button. Thank you. Have a good day.